And we are live. We are live on YouTube. We're live on Facebook. We're live on Periscope and Twitter. We're live on LinkedIn, believe it or not. Like, that's a thing that you can do. And then in our Facebook group as well. So, hey, welcome everybody. And so in this video, what I'm going to be talking about is my experience and background in how I was able to speak at conferences. So if you've been able to, or if you've been wanting to speak at conferences, I'm going to lay down exactly what I was able to do, just kind of break it down step by step so that I can help you get selected for the next conferences that you apply to speak at. So just to kind of sum up my experience with speaking, just some of the notable things, just so you know my background. So I've spoken in social media marketing world twice. Just did a bunch of emceeing this year, in fact, with the event, which I absolutely love that community, love that conference. Spoke at Podcast Movement a number of times. Spoken at FinCon, which is a personal finance blogger and content producer conference, which again, absolutely an incredible community. All of these communities are just amazing. So I've spoken at FinCon pretty much every single year. And then as well, I've actually hosted my own full-day conferences called Fame and Profit Lab. And we're actually just getting ready to announce one for 2019. And this is a conference specifically for podcasters where we help them increase their traffic and make a lot of money podcasting, because it is, believe it or not, it's quite possible to make some good money podcasting. So that's kind of my experience. Now, I've done a lot of corporate speaking as well, where it's been paid. And so I've been invited by a good dozen or so different companies where they've actually paid me to show up and teach on a particular topic. So in the past, I used to do a lot of speaking around savings angel topics, so saving money and that sort of thing, and talking about financial wellness, particularly in the workplace, and making good financial decisions. So however, the past 5 years, I've almost exclusively just been talking about growing authority, growing visibility, getting in the media. And by the way, if you could do me a favor, I do see a bunch of folks watching right now. Hey, Jacqueline, how are you? That's Jacqueline coming, and that is through Periscope. Welcome, Jacqueline. You can comment below on any of this stuff. Like if I blaze through something a little too fast, you're like, whoa, wait a minute, Josh, you did what? Go ahead and pause me or ask me a question on that. It's really important that by the end of this video, you feel exceptionally confident that you can book yourself at professional conferences, and we'll talk about the difference between speaking for companies and getting paid for that, and then speaking at professional conferences, kind of what you can expect in terms of like compensation and that sort of thing too. So that's all going to be included in that. Now, one thing I need to let you know, if you have not taken our authority quiz, you should do that right now. And you can actually find that at UpMyInfluence.com/quiz. And the reason why is if you take that authority quiz, you're going to find out your authority score. And that's going to be really important information for you to know. We're actually going to go through a bunch of indicators of authority. You're going to check yes next to the ones that you have authority in. And this is really going to impact you being able to be a paid speaker and you being able to speak at professional conferences. So again, that's at UpMyInfluence.com/quiz. Take the quiz right now, because it's really going to give you, it's going to be very eye-opening, because we're going to talk about, as we talk about like how you get selected and how you can get paid more as a speaker, a lot of this stuff today, guys, it just comes down to how you come across on the interwebs. And so it's really important that we kind of get all of that stuff in line. And again, I'll go into that in this video. Now, one thing that I'd like to invite you to join as well is starting 1 week from today, I am going to be giving away a free masterclass. It is the Authority Transformation Masterclass. And that actually begins May 8th. And so if you go to the quiz, take the quiz, you'll be the first one invited to be able to take that free masterclass. It's 4 videos. It is going to completely rock your world. It is going to impact every decision you make in business for the rest of your life. If you are an executive with a company and you're looking to expand your personal branding, your personal worth, get more, get compensated more, this is all a part of that. And so again, make sure you take the quiz. You'll be invited to take the free masterclass. It's going to be life-changing. And then, of course, we're actually going to be opening up a total authority makeover class sometime toward the end of May as well, where basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through, and wouldn't it be awesome to have somebody just go through and bam, get it all done, get all your branding, get all of your authority, get all of your indicators of authority, your press kit, your social media profiles, just get everything. Like if you're like on a scale from 1 to 100, you're like a 22 right now. Wouldn't it be awesome if we could go take you from 22 to like a 70? And so that's the kind of thing. We're going to be opening up a class in May, and we're actually going to offer that for a select group of people. We're just going to open it up for about a week, have a bunch of people join us, and then about 8 to 12 months later, we'll open up our next class. So be on the lookout for that. Again, the way into all this stuff is you go to upmyinfluence.com/quiz. All right, so let's talk about speaking, and I'll do this and kind of frame it with my own experience. So where did I start in speaking? Toastmasters, like a lot of other people. Or like if Toastmasters is not going to be your thing and you just refuse to join that organization, look, there's some skills you're just going to need to get really good at. Being able to speak extemporaneously, which just means off the cuff, is a very, very valuable skill. Not just because you're going to be doing all your speaking extemporaneously. There are going to be times when you have a very, very planned speech. And if you don't have the confidence to go live, in other words, to go off the cuff, it's going to mess you up. And so if I'm thinking about what are the skills and what do you need to build around yourself so that you can actually make a go at this. See, it's one thing to learn how to pitch and sell yourself. It's another thing to truly perform well as a speaker. And let me tell you, I mean, I've seen some pretty bad speakers and they don't get hired too much. And I've seen some really, really good speakers who don't get booked that much. So you need to have both, right? You need to actually have the skills as a speaker, and you also need to have the skills of being able to, get yourself booked. And so those are really kind of like two separate activities in the same, in the same goal. All right. So what would I recommend? Well, I'd recommend you just give yourself 1 year of Toastmasters if you're not an accomplished speaker already. Okay, do that because it's going to. Again, I'd say the most valuable thing, constructing a presentation from the front of the room is really important. But again, I think the most valuable thing is the confidence. And especially the confidence in being able to speak off the cuff, because there's been a lot of times when I've had technical problems or, we've had to go off script, like at Social Media Marketing World in 2018, for example, they're just technical things that you can try to prepare for. And we ran into a situation with my slides auto advancing. And in the moment, I mean, we had like 15 minutes to tech and everybody trying to fix it. Couldn't fix it. Don't know why. So that sort of thing can happen. Can you put yourself in a very, very uncomfortable, awkward position and still be able to perform well? If you can, okay, this is going to increase your value and worth as a speaker. And so you'll get better gigs. Because I'll tell you that no meeting planner with a very reputable, especially larger conference or larger organization, they're not going to take a risk on you until they can see that you can perform very well. And hopefully you are with me by now. I promise you that what I'm telling you is absolutely my experience with this. So what are some other options besides Toastmasters? As I say, you don't have Toastmasters in your area. I don't know if this is going to be an option for you, but I would highly recommend that you take some classes in improv. Yeah, improv comedy. And the reason why is there are some skills, and I took about a year of improv, and I'll tell you that it improved pretty much every area of my life. Now, here in Central Florida, we have SAC Comedy Lab, which is actually where Wayne Brady of Whose Line Is It Anyway got his start, and I took classes for a year. And I'm going to tell you that I was at times really, really, really super uncomfortable during these improv classes, particularly where if it's a good instructor, you're going to suffer at some point. Like you're going to do something and it's going to feel very uncomfortable and awkward, and you're in front of a bunch of people and you got to keep on going. And I had a number of those experiences. I had experiences where I just completely failed. I had experiences where I feel like I did very, very well. Improv, by the way, is not about learning comedy so much as it is learning how to construct a scene and learning how to be absolutely in the moment and hyper aware of what's going on. And then I would say for me, the biggest thing that I learned from improv was being able to turn off that analytical mind that filters everything you say before you say it. Now, here's why this is so critical. When you can gain the confidence that you're going to say and do the perfect thing, you're going to find that your skills as a speaker, bam, it's going to go through the roof. I really legitimately mean that. That's the way, that's exactly what I experienced. Improv is going to help you do that. And so I'd highly recommend that. So anyway, so those are kind of like the hard speaking skills. Obviously, we're going to talk about starting small. That's really critical. Starting with just small workshops, just doing stuff pro bono in your local community, and kind of growing from there. And by the way, like I've done Keynote events. I've done just about everything in terms of speaking. And before we get into a little bit more granular in terms of like what exactly I did, who I talked to, I do want to let you know what is the value in this. Well, you can actually go back to my podcast. One of my podcasts is Authority Confidential. And about a month and a half ago, I interviewed Kate Erickson, and she and I actually talked quite a bit about this. And so if you really want to learn more about this, go to UpMyInfluence.com, hover over podcasts, and click on, we've got two podcasts. One is The Thoughtful Entrepreneur, and the other one is Authority Confidential. Go to Authority Confidential. And I think Kate was probably the first or second person that I interviewed on the show. And so go listen to her experience in terms of like how she will credit speaking as something that really impacted her own authority. Look, live events within communities is a huge uptick to your authority. So if you want to get more sales, if you want more leads, if you want shorter sales cycles, if you want more inbound opportunities, you want to improve your conversion rate, if you want to lower your cost per lead, if you want to be able to rise and continue to get bigger and bigger opportunities, just getting in to speaking and getting the ball rolling is exactly how you can grow all of that. Obviously, as you know, I'm a big fan of being in the media as well. But I would say speaking, media work, and being on now over 150 podcasts interviewed as a guest, like those three things have been really, really, really amazing for our business. And again, when you take your authority quiz at upmyinfluence.com/quiz and you start the masterclass, which begins in May, at the early May, like May 8th, 1 week from now, I'm going to really get very specific on how you can start checking a lot of these boxes so that you can grow your own influence. Okay. So I talked about starting off by doing improv, I talked about starting off taking, this is Toastmasters way back when. I wasn't very good at this. I was horrible, in fact, in Toastmasters. I had absolutely no skills, and I was very uncomfortable, and that's a good thing. To get good at being a speaker, you need to put yourself in uncomfortable situations over and over and over and over again so that you gain the confidence so that when you do get the big speaking opportunities, you're going to do okay because you could go back and this is the thing that you want to say. You say, look, if I can do that uncomfortable thing that I did, I can do this. This is no problem. And so do scary things in your life, like jumping out of an airplane or whatever it is, right? And then you can harken back to that. Like it really, really, really helps. Okay. So that's the one thing is just speaking a lot. Now I do recommend in terms of like being able to tell your story, being able to communicate yourself well. I think one of the greatest opportunities is reaching out to small podcasters, not the big ones. Leave them alone. Right? They get hit up enough. Reach out to small podcasters and offer to teach their audience, teach on that. So be a podcast guest. We help a lot of good people get lots of great podcast opportunities. And the more you do this, then the better you are going to get at this skill. So I really love, like, if I were to give you an assignment, like, if you're really, really early stage right now, I'd say, take an improv class. I'd say join Toastmasters. And then, assuming that you have some expertise, and I think most of us are pretty good teachers at one thing in particular. I want to let you know that some people get this imposter syndrome. I just had a magnificent interview that I did for Authority Confidential, interviewing Ruth Sukup about doing it scared. We talked a lot about this. But it's really important that, again, you find situations that that you feel like you're not ready for, and you do them anyway. And it's action is the antidote to fear. You just have to do the thing. And in fact, I've also, one thing that I don't promote because I'm not allowed to, but I was invited by the Tony Robbins organization as well. And I taught his business mastery audience. So there's over 300 people in that session. And so that was another amazing opportunity. But one thing that Tony Robbins will tell you is that when you sense fear, you need to train yourself that when you sense that fear, you go, a worthy opponent. Like that's kind of what you want to be able to respond with. And when you can get to that point, that will help you. But again, so you keep finding those experiences. Then what I would do, so you get some small podcasts. It's very safe. It's audio only in most cases. That would be a good next step. Then what I want you to do is I want you to get on Meetup. And I want you to find groups that you can get involved with, small little meetups, little networking groups that are going to give you like 5-10 minutes to take the floor. And then you want to practice in front of really small groups like that. Now, let's say you're already doing that. Well, where do you go from now? And I know some people are watching this like, Josh, just tell me how to get on social media marketing world, how to get on social media marketing world's stage. Well, I'll tell you, they're not going to talk to you unless they can check you out and find out that you've got this experience. So one thing that I would highly recommend that you do is that you have a speaker kit on your site. So I've got that information on Savings Angel for myself. I have that information on UpMyInfluence. We're actually redoing our speaker kit. I'm going to have a whole page all about all the, really just selling like what an amazing speaker I am. I mean, I don't, but that's what you have to convey. And we're going to talk about in just a little bit. We're also going to talk about, as I go through my experience, we're going to talk about paid speaking and how you can go from being paid $1,000, which I think is, in terms of paid speaking, that's the lowest priced thing that I've ever charged, up to 5 figures. And I've gotten real close to 5 figures. I haven't charged 5 figures just yet, mainly because I haven't been really pushing. I haven't been pushing my speaking work in the past year or so. I've really been doing a lot of professional conferences, which have been good for building my brand. And all this is part of the strategy, and you need to decide what it is that you want to do. Okay, so now that you've been doing your local meetups, your local workshops, maybe you've built up to being able to present in front of 20 people. Now, how do you find all this stuff? You just got to network. You just got to get involved in local stuff. And then what you want to do is at these conferences, professional conferences, start with the smaller ones. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go through some that I speak at regularly. Podcast Movement, FinCon, and Social Media Marketing World. I'll talk about Florida BlogCon is another one. I've actually done I've done the keynote at Florida BlogCon. So Florida BlogCon is a regional event. Podfest, I've spoken at Podfest a number of times as well. So now Podfest has become a much bigger event now, but initially it was a regional event. Regional events are going to be much easier for you to get in. Today, I will tell you that Podcast Movement is exceptionally hard to to apply to speak at and get accepted. So if you applied and you didn't get in, that's okay. I applied as well and I didn't get accepted, but that's okay. Like, I understand why. Like, I know what my message is, and there's just maybe 1 or 2 slots available for someone who teaches, on things pertaining to the things that I'm an expert in. So I don't feel so badly about that. Okay, and I'll talk about Social Media Marketing World. So let me go through my timeline here. The very first of all the conferences that I mentioned, the very first one I spoke at on behalf of UpMyInfluence was Podfest. Podfest was a regional event at the time. I think the first year, maybe they had about 120, 150 people there, and there was some good time, there were some good slots for me to get accepted. So I got accepted and I spoke at Podfest, and it went pretty well. I'd really practiced that, gave a presentation, had a lot of interest, and that was successful. And I had a notch in my belt. So then what you do is you have to grab evidence that you spoke, and you need to make sure that that goes on your site. Now, if you don't have this, and you still need to want to brand yourself as a speaker when you go to a conference. Now, be ethical about how you do this, and don't put a logo in the background if you haven't legitimately spoken at that conference. You know what I mean? But you can go on stage and stage photos of you as a speaker. Okay, this is completely ethical. If you have a picture of you with a microphone and you've got Social Media Marketing World's logo in the background, that would not be something. Don't do that, because now you're taking that brand with you, and you're implying that you've been chosen as a speaker for this. So don't do that. So take a picture off the side, stage it or whatever. But you got to do this. Like, you have to brand yourself as a speaker, and you have to do it visually as well. And you have to give meeting planners and selection boards a visual idea of what you are. Now, far better than images would be video. Having a short speaker reel, honestly, 90 seconds would probably be perfect. Okay, so what you do, take all your clips of you speaking on stage, edit that together, it's a highlight reel. And you don't want to have clips that are longer than 20 seconds. It needs to be bam, 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 call to action, list out all of your credentials on screen on that speaker reel. This is really going to help you get selected as a speaker, because meeting planners check into all of this stuff. If you are going for paid speaking, this is going to help you make far more money as a speaker. Okay. So again, so you start with the regional events, then you start applying to the national events. But here's the thing, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. Chances are you're going to need to apply, especially if this is your first national event. This is like the same pattern that we see for like getting media. Like we have people that come to us and like, Josh, can you get me on Good Morning Today? Or it's a Good Morning, the Good Morning America or the Today Show. And you're like, yeah, we can, but let's take a look at where you're at. Oh no, it's going to be a while. Because you're going to need to earn your way up there. So you need to earn your way in the speaking world as well. So now, podcast movement, I will tell you that it's really valuable that you invest in relationships and that and you invest into communities. So if you want to speak at podcast movement, you better be a part of the you're not going to just be some hokey speaker and then just show up out of the blue and expect that you're going to get selected to speak at podcast movement. It's just not going to happen. So you're going to need to be super active in the podcast movement community or the Podfest community or the FinCon community or social media marketing world community. And so you're involved in that community. You get to know people who are part of the selection process and you befriend them and you get on their radar and you serve them and you bring them value. You become an indispensable source. And now another thing I would tell you is that in order to really brand yourself as a speaker, it's really important. You've heard the expression, riches are in the niches, even though I think the proper pronunciation is niches. The riches are in the niches. So it's really critical that as you develop a presentation, that you don't have a presentation that's just like, Matt Foley, motivational speaker, and my talk is called "Go for It," right? It's like everyone does that. Like, don't do that. It needs to be very, very specific. So obviously, if you know me very well, you'll know that I'm really, really big on using the media to build authority, and that authority will give you everything you want in life and in business. Matter of fact, again, if you aren't registered for my masterclass, my free masterclass, which opens in 1 week on May 8th, please jump on that. Go to upmyinfluence.com/quiz, register so you'll be the first to know so that you can make sure that you attend my free masterclass. So now, you want to develop a message. So if you talk about, you're a Facebook ads manager, man, you better have something very, very specific because that is a very commoditized field and you do not want to be a generalist. It's far better to have a very specific message that still has some appeal to a general audience, and that's really going to help you. So, how did I speak at FinCon? Well, I had a relationship with PT. We knew each other. I had experience in something. So my very first presentation at FinCon was that I was part of a panel. Now, that's another great way to get into conferences for your first year or two. Start by getting on a panel. And I've been on a couple of panels at FinCon. And so you would brand yourself, try to get, find out how they select panels. Maybe you need to go in with 4 or 5 people all together. You apply for the same panel. And that would be one way that you could get in a little bit easier. And so you all talk about a specific, probably generally more broad topic. And then you would have your unique point of view that you would bring to that panel. All right. So that would be another really, really great way to get into a big conference. So then, with FinCon, I had some experience with getting in the media. So I was able to tell PT, well, hey, I'd love to be on this panel. Amanda Abeo was on that panel. There were a few other people. And that was my very first FinCon I'd ever been to. So I got pretty lucky. Usually you need to attend an event before you can get selected to speak too. I'll just tell you that. And you need to, again, be very active in the community. So that was my first experience. Second year, I actually came back for a panel again. Talked about podcasting, which I think was actually a mistake. I really needed to stay true to my one message of just getting in the media. And then the opportunity came to speak at FinCon, give my own presentation all about the media. And what's nice about my message is I don't have a lot of competition. There aren't a lot of people within the communities that I'm involved in that are talking about the same thing that I'm talking about. So that's another advantage to really kind of honing in on a particular message, because it's very sellable, and people, decision makers, will say, our audience could really use this. And it looks like Josh is the most qualified person to talk on this subject. So that's the position that you want to put yourself in. And again, man, I'm telling you that what I'm telling you, by the way, I'm just going to tell you right now, like, I wish I knew all this stuff years and years and years ago. So if you're new in your speaking career, I'm just going to tell you, like, what I just want to reinforce that what you're learning right now, this is like so crazy valuable. I just want to reinforce that I hope you're taking serious notes and you're not blowing this thing off. Because again, I've spoken to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. I've many dozens of presentations to some pretty big audiences, been invited by Tony Robbins, been invited by Mike Stelzner, Social Media Marketing World, all these other ones. And I'm telling you that what I'm teaching you, this is how you do it. So next came Podcast Movement. I was friends with Jared. I was friends with Dan. I'd gone to Podcast Movement. I volunteered to do some introing. That would be another way that you can invest into a community, as you say, look, I'd love to intro some speakers. Happy to do it just because I love the community. That would be another great way to get your foot in the door. Just get on their radar, get known. Highly recommend that. And so then I got to speak at Podcast Movement in Chicago and had a full room, really practiced my stuff. And that's the thing too, is, it's really great to have great improv skills, but you also need to, like with your slideshow, you probably want to rehearse it at least 8 to 10 times. And I'm not even joking. And that's another way to get over a fear. Like if you're nervous about getting in front of the room, the fact that you rehearse it over and over again, action is the antidote to fear. And so when you practice it over and over again, your confidence level goes up, you're going to do just fine. Now, again, which is why another reason I recommend that you practice on small stages early on, so that when you screw up, and you are going to screw up, you're going to do really bad. Like my first presentations were terrible, and that's okay. And so that's why I want you to make all your mistakes on small stages. I remember speaking at, it was like some presentation for Savings Angel. It was at the conference, some big convention center. I want to say it was like a home and garden home show. It was a home show for whatever reason. I spoke at, I don't know why, but I was just so nervous, and I'm holding the microphone, and like the whole time my hand is just doing this the whole time. I don't know why I was so nervous. Intellectually I had no reason to be nervous, but I just couldn't stop shaking. And it was probably just because I hadn't done it a whole lot, or I hadn't spoken in a long time. And so as you do this more and more, you're not going to have those experiences. Another thing with bad speaker behavior, grabbing death grip on a pulpit type, lectern type thing. A lot of ums, uhs, knows. The more you practice this, the more that stuff will just naturally work itself out. You don't need to stress on that. Pretty much everybody does it at the beginning. And that's why, again, you practice on the small stages. Okay. So Podcast Movement, I had been involved, did a bunch of introing. Then I think the second year, I actually spoke at an event the day prior to Podcast Movement, but it was affiliated with Podcast Movement. And so that would be another way, like if you find ancillary events. So for example, what we did before in years past is we did Fame and Profit Lab, and we did it the day before Podcast Movement, or we did it the day before PodFest, and we invited speakers on the stage. And these were not necessarily main stage speakers, but these were speakers that had really valuable content to share. And so when we do Fame and Profit Lab this year, we're going to need about 10 to 12 speakers. Now, when you apply, let me give you super ninja hack. And there's a good 20 some people watching this live right now across all the social media platforms. I'm going to teach you this right here. When you apply to speak, this right here, so many people screw this up. And I'll tell you that when I So a lot of our clients, we help them as they're kind of growing their speaking. We're not a speaker bureau, but we know this stuff really, really well. So we've provided a lot of strategy for our Up My Influence members. One thing when I look at applications to speak, one thing you need to keep in mind is that the selection committee is interested in a couple things. Number one, are you going to bring value to the show itself? And that is, are you going to bring value to the audience? And that's really, really important. Are you going to be a great speaker? Are people going to be so thrilled that they showed up in your event? Number two, and this is so huge, you need to illustrate how you are going to promote the event. Ticket sales are so critical to an event. So with Fame and Profit Lab, for example, our own event, it's a smaller event, but generally, we're shooting for about 100, 150 people in the room. We did about 90 last time we did it, so we feel pretty confident we could do it. But how do we do that? We do that because we partner with all of our speakers, and we expect that they're going to promote their appearance pretty heavily to their own audience so they could get people to show up. We want people in the room. And so when you're applying to these other conferences, part of your pitch needs to be about how you are going to, you've got X number of social media audience, you've got X number of people on your email list, and you're going to send, 3 to 5 messages, direct messages to your email list, promoting the event, helping to sell tickets. You participate in the affiliate program for the event itself. I mean, this is all really, really critical. And this is what conferences are looking for. They want to know that you are going to partner with them in helping to grow the show. So that said, what is the difference between a speaker that has 100 followers on Twitter and a speaker that has 100,000 followers on Twitter? Well, probably a 6-figure income. Okay. So is your social media, your social proof, is that fair game for meeting planners and selection committees? Absolutely. Absolutely. And you might think that that's not fair. I'm sorry. It's just the way that it is. So you better believe that they're going to take a look at your social media following. And if you have a small social media following, you may not be ready for that event. If you have a larger social media following, you're much more likely, even if you're less qualified as a speaker today, we see this. You're going to get selected. If you have a big social media following, you're more likely to get selected than someone who might have a better message, but they've got a small social media following. It's really interesting. Like in journalism, I've spoken to journalism students, and I say, so how many of you are actively growing your audience on social media and really building your brand professionally? You're producing content in a blog, YouTube, producing, you're doing live streaming, that sort of thing. How many of you actively are building an audience? You have over 1,000 people now that are actively following you. I'm not just talking about your pictures of all your goofy stuff on the weekend. I'm talking about professionally. How many of you have that audience? Couple hands go up. Say, guys, listen, you're not going to get hired for your college degree today. If you want to work in journalism, you're going to get hired because you have a big following. And that's the reality. Is it right? Well, it's a business. Journalism is a business. Conferences, it's a business. And so if you need to think about, and again, this is our philosophy with working with the media, what value do I bring this journalist? What value do I bring this producer? What value do I bring this influencer? And if I can bring them, what value do I bring this conference? And if you lead with that, it's really going to improve your success rate. So now if you're a part of our community, by the way, to Up My Influence, you can send, we do monthly trainings. We often do trainings on growing your speaking career, and I'll have people share their pitches and they'll tell me what conference they're applying to. They'll show the pitch, and then in the group, we'll actually go through and we'll analyze, and I'll give you a lot of recommendations on how to make sure that you get accepted as a speaker. Well, not make sure, no one can really control that, but at least we can kind of stack the deck in your favor so that you're more likely to get selected. So, spoke at Podcast Movement because, again, first year, did some introing. Second year, spoke at that pre-Podcast Movement event. Third year, bam, did my own session. And then beyond that, I haven't been, I did a great session, packed the room, at a line afterwards of people wanting to talk to me. Like, it was always like 4 or 5 deep. Cause I said, look, meet me by the FinCon booth. Wink, wink. Again, more networking. That's where I'm going to be hanging out. And it was really super valuable. But then podcast movement as a whole has become more of an industry event in my experience. So it's less of an event that I would say is geared for independent podcasters that are looking to, it's an amazing event, but it absolutely does need to serve a bigger tent today. So if you want to talk about, hustling and grinding for a solopreneur, it's going to be pretty tough. There just aren't that many sessions for that kind of an event or that kind of a session at Podcast Movement anymore. So again, if you know the event very well and you know the community very well, you'll discover that. Okay, so let's talk about social media marketing world. How did I get selected to speak at social media marketing world? Well, it started with my friendship with Leslie Samuels of Becoming a Blogger, Learning with Leslie. Welcome to Learning with Leslie. And he does a podcast. I love Leslie. He's become a very, very good friend. And I'm so grateful for his friendship because I did a podcast with Leslie. And the podcast interview went, I thought, pretty well. And he says, well, Josh, is there anything I can do for you? And I said, well, it's been my dream to, work with Mike Stelzner in some way. And I know you guys are friends. And again, I know that because I've invested in relationships. And he says, well, I'll tell you, I'll make sure to ping Michael and have him listen to this episode. And if he likes it, then, who knows what can happen. So Mike Stelzner, of amazing podcast, Social Media Marketing World, or Social Media Marketing, and also the founder of Social Media Marketing World, which is a huge conference. I got the connection. And Mike says, well, let's do a pre-interview real quick. Let's talk about it. And actually first I had a conversation with somebody else. Then I had the pre-interview with Mike. And then I had the actual interview. So I passed kind of, being on Leslie's podcast, then the screener, then the pre-interview, passed all that test. And again, do you have something of value that you could teach that's unique and gets people to say, wow, people really need to know this information. And then finally, I did the interview with Mike. And so Mike Stelzner, at the end of the interview, we're done. He's like, well, Josh, is there anything I can do for you? I said, well, Mike, it's been my dream to speak at Social Media Marketing World. And he goes, well, I'll take a look and see, how this podcast episode does. And if it looks like there's some interest in this topic, then, we'll have a conversation. We'll look at that. And so, flash forward a month or two later, and I keep in contact with Mike, and, I promote the episode as well. And that's one thing, like, you need to promote everything you're doing, and you need to show evidence that you are willing to promote that stuff. And so did that. And then Mike said, well, Josh, we'd like to invite you to speak at Social Media Marketing World. And so I got to do a 90-minute session, which was incredible, packed the room, had over 500 people in the room, and I got to teach on this subject. Did well enough on that, kept my relationship, kept on promoting Social Media Marketing World, and got invited back to speak in year two, a second year. And not only that, but we actually also had the opportunity to help out with some PR for Social Media Marketing World, the conference itself. And we had actually gotten a total of 6 speakers from Social Media Marketing World, gotten them into 3 different TV stations all at the same time in San Diego. So again, helping out, serving, participating, that sort of thing. So second year, this is why it's really important to get really good at improv and speaking extemporaneously. My conference, so they had ended my session 20 minutes too early, and then the timekeeper was like, oh, and so I had been keeping time with my presentation thinking, wow, this is, I timed this thing, seems to be going a lot faster, but, I can't argue with the timekeeper. And then finally she goes, oh, we've got like 30 minutes for Q&A. And so this is why it's really important, like, your stuff and you have the comfort level to speak extemporaneously, because I basically winged it for 30 minutes. And so can you do that? Well, if you can, that's part of the, the skills that would be really helpful for you to have so that you can get lots of speaking opportunities. So that's how I got social media marketing world. How did I speak for Tony Robbins? Okay. So I had built up, I had some success. I've got something that I can kind of, say, look, here's what I accomplished. And I've spoken to social media marketing world. I've spoken here, spoken here, spoken here. And in the conference feedback, this is where I applied, believe it or not. I said, in my conference feedback, I attended Business Mastery. And I said, I would absolutely love to see more content around getting in the media. By the way, would love to help out. Just absolutely happy to do that pro bono, love to do it digitally, whatever opportunity there is. Here's my experience, here's my background, and I would love to do this just as a way of saying thank you, to the amazing community that supported me. So believe it or not, someone responded to that, and that's what led to me being able to teach and be invited by Tony Robbins organization, which again, they've got a very, it's like I can't put that on my sales page, or I can't really promote, as seen on Tony Robbins. I can put it in my bio, and I can tell stories about it, like in this situation. And that's just once in a while, you're going to get situations and there's other corporate events. Corporate events, sometimes they'll have you do that, that they don't want you promoting it on any kind of sales page. You can only include it in a bio or something like that. And that's going to happen. So paid speaking, the more visible you are, I've gotten some paid speaking gigs from being in social media marketing world, gotten paid speaking gigs from being part of Tony Robbins. Those are both good visibility things for me. But a lot of times you're just going to need to go out and you're going to need to just sell yourself. And so a lot of times people will say, well, I need to hire an agency, and an agency is going to solve all my problems. I don't know that that's really necessary, especially early on. Now, in the later stages, when you could charge 5 figures, it absolutely, I think, makes sense, because they're going to do it on percentage. They'll keep 20%, and which is great. You keep 8,000. They earn 2,000 for every gig that they land you. So when you get up to that level, it makes sense. When you're at the smaller level, just do this stuff yourself, or hire a VA, someone to research companies that you can speak with, and put together a really, really, really great proposal. Put together a really, really, really great speaker kit. Work on your authority. Take my authority quiz at UpMyInfluence.com/quiz. Go through my authority masterclass, which begins on May 8th. If you take the quiz, I'll send you a personal invite that you could be a part of this free masterclass. Again, it starts in 7 days. Let's knock out your authority so that you're much more likely to get these opportunities. But from there, guys, what I just laid out, if you go back, one thing I would highly recommend you do, go back and rewatch this and take some serious notes. Again, I've spoken to thousands. I've gotten paid many tens of thousands of dollars just in speaking alone. And I'm telling you that this is how you do it. There are people that will sell you packages, and they'll tell you other stuff. And I don't know that that's necessary. I don't think it's necessary, some of that stuff. There are probably some speaker bureaus out there that will charge you thousands of dollars, and they'll charge you thousands of dollars for monthly retainers while they pitch and sell you, and they may or may not get you anything. I'm telling you that if you want to make your job easier, you need to invest in your branding, your speaker kit, your media kit, your social proof, your associations, and being able to communicate your success. And then you also need to invest in communities. You do those things, this is today's path to growing an extremely profitable speaking career. What I just taught you, by the way, I've been through speaking courses that I've paid thousands and thousands of dollars to. I just condensed it. This is all you need to know. I didn't know. There may be some other things, and if you disagree with me or you have something else like, hey, Josh, man, you really didn't cover this, comment below. Post below. Let me know what I missed. Or if you have questions, someone was trying to sell you a bag of goods, right? Let me know what they told you, and I'll let you know what I think. It's, again, at the end of the day, it's just my experienced opinion on this stuff. Other people are going to have other different experiences in this, and you get to make a decision for you and your business. I would say in the meantime, why don't we work on some free stuff like my free quiz and my free masterclass, and then you could decide where you go from there and what you want to focus on. Now, congratulations. I think the next 12 months, you take this stuff seriously. I think the next 12 months are going to be very exciting for you. And I'm excited to see your growth. I'm excited to see the community that you build for yourself. I'm excited to see the increase in authority that you build for yourself. And I'm excited to hear about all of the profit and all the money that you make as a result of being a paid speaker. There's a lot of other stuff we could have gone into, like a lot of the nuts and bolts, when you're on stage, selling from the stage. I didn't go into all that. Okay, I'd be happy to talk about that if you decide to become a part of our Up My Influence community, which you're welcome to do. Again, take the quiz, join my masterclass, and you'll get an invitation to join our Total Authority Makeover group, which is going to be starting at the end of May. So I hope to see you there. So with that, have a wonderful week. Have an amazing week. Thank you so much. I'm actually going to be doing another live session in just a few days, and I'm going to be talking about how I've been able to get on over 150 podcasts as a guest. And so make sure that you hit subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Make sure that you've taken the quiz. I'll email you, let you know when and where that next session is, so you can learn exactly how I was able to get on over 150 podcasts. You can actually go to upmyinfluence.com/Josh, and you can see all the 150 plus podcasts that I've been on, and you can listen to a bunch. But I'm going to go through and I'm going to teach you exactly what I did to get all of those amazing podcast guest appearances. So with that, again, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. Leave your comment below, give me a thumbs up, and hit share for someone that you know that would like to grow their own speaking career. So with that, have a wonderful day. Take care.